background on myself, I have kind of a weird history in that I'm now, my sort of day job is I'm part of a group called TalkShop that does a lot, but we do primarily we're rooted in PR, and then do a number of different marketing and digital things. But I started almost by accident in business when I was like 24 years old, and we had started a group that was a money group and ended up getting on Oprah. And then it just morphed into a business, like quite a big business. For a while we had like a major website that sent out daily emails. We wrote a series of books with Random House on Smart Cookie's Guide to Making More Dough. And we had a TV series with the W Network. I still do a lot of, it's my passion is just especially in communicating with women, really, I think we all have a bit of a stigma around like, I'm not good at math, or I can't do that, and I'm the worst. Like I'm still every day. That's like AA. Like it's a struggle. But that's what I love to do. But day in and day out, I'm at TalkShop. I've also just in the last year founded a cool initiative that's really trying to bring attention to specifically for students the career opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math. Something I have also know very little. I like to get into industries I know nothing about and then have businesses. And then I've been a part of the TEDx group here in Vancouver for a few years.
And so the last 14 or so years of my entrepreneurial career have been, they've all had a similar theme. You'll see, I'll talk about a few of the brands that I created, but the thing that is consistent across all of them is they've all had to do with producing content, or helping others tell stories and share content. And so it's something that I'm very passionate about. And the thing that I think has also made all the brands similar is not just the production of sharing of content, is the how we do it. And even though all of my brands have done different things, what's been the same is the simplicity and the conversational nature and making different topics fun and acting as a filter. And so that's sort of where I've carved out my career. Prior to that, before I started my entrepreneurial journey, I worked in advertising for a number of years with one of the big agencies and a few other marketing firms prior to that. But like I said, for a very long time, I've been building businesses. And so it started in 2004. I built a company called sweetspot.ca. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. And so that always warms my heart when people still say yes, because it's so long ago now. Yeah. So SweetSpot was a digital lifestyle publication. It started off as an email only and in Toronto only. And over the years, we grew and grew, and it became a website destination with tons of content and across cities, across Canada. I think we were in 5 cities at the peak. And I ultimately sold it to Rogers Publishing, and unfortunately, a couple years after that, they shut it down. So that's another entrepreneurial story that I won't share today, but a lot of big lessons learned as an entrepreneur and just as a person. Anyway, so from there, I had another idea on what I saw was sort of a trend happening in e-commerce, was launching eLux, which was an e-commerce site with contemporary fashion brands for women, but it was all couched in a content story. So we produced a digital magazine every week, and this purpose was to engage and entertain and provide women style insights that would then drive them to purchase. So I think with that, e-commerce in Canada is still very challenging, but in 2011 was even more challenging in that Canadians still weren't shopping online at the same rate as anywhere else in the world, especially in the US, and the infrastructure just wasn't there. And unfortunately, in order to scale the business, it was just going to be just massively expensive. And so unfortunately, that business folded after about 3 or 4 years. I actually left the business before it folded. Other people took over. But so then for about 3 or 4 years, I decided to take all the learnings that I had learned as an entrepreneur and work with other brands, mainly small to medium-sized businesses, mainly in the lifestyle sector, but not only so, and help them build their brands and tell their stories. And so I was doing that for about 3 years, and about a year or so ago, I started to feel like I told people over and over that I felt like an overqualified water girl. in that I was very supportive, I was helping other people, but I was benched. And I wasn't building my own brand, and I really missed it. I love building brands, and I love creating content, and I also love building a culture and an organization, and that just wasn't happening in the consulting business. And so I started doing my research and sort of introspection and figuring out what am I excited about and what's going on out there, and I came up with the idea for The Bullet. And so The Bullet is a daily newsletter publication, and we dish the national and international news in a simple, conversational and lighthearted and sarcastic sort of way. I'm really excited because Nicole here is one of my advertisers and I got to meet her in person today, so that was really exciting. Yeah, so she can attest to it as well. So that really allowed me to marry, like I said, my passion for all those sorts of things, and also allowed me to practice what I preach, because so many times with my consulting clients and telling them what to do and why they need to produce content, and I've got every excuse of why they can't do it, and now I actually can say to people, I do this every single day, and the schedule on it is grueling because it's the news and it's very time sensitive, and if I can do this, then you can do this. And so it keeps me on my toes too, because I'm learning. I do things, I try marketing campaigns and they don't work, and I'm a consultant in marketing, and it just goes to show you that you have to test and learn, which I'm going to talk about a lot. So I guess my one ask for the day is sign up for The Bullet. Get your news. Yeah.
So this is sort of the representation of all the tools in the marketing toolbox, and I think I know a lot of you that are here, and you might be doing some or a few, and the point is it can be super overwhelming. We're in this business, and it can be overwhelming at times. My own philosophy in this area and in life is do less well. So I'm a big believer in there's only going to be a handful of things that are really going to do it for you, and so be a master at that. That starts with, I think, understanding it. Certainly does not mean you should be doing it as you grow. It just means you know what that should look like. You know what success is. And I keep giving the example of as I was growing my business, I was getting advice like, oh, just hire a sales force. Like, they're just dying to sell PR and marketing business. Anyway. And so I was like, fine, okay, I don't know how to manage those people, so I'm gonna hire them, and then what? I'm not gonna be able to support them or really understand what success should look like. And so I leaned in and was like, okay, I'm gonna be a salesperson and learn sales, and I did it and was like, I really liked it, but I was like, okay, I now know, I have to take this many meetings to get any kind of feedback. I need, these are the things that work for me, and these are the things that don't. And so now we're building out a small team of salespeople, and I'm like, and I can also mentor them, which is something that I find great. Anyway, I digress. But fact of it is, you're going to have to understand some of this stuff and sort of zero in on a few things that are really going to work for you.
So why does marketing matter anyway? Well, marketing matters, I believe, because your brand is everything. Your brand is your business. When you try to define what the word marketing actually means, and I've been challenged with this because when I have to explain to my 7-year-old what I do for a living, he's very disappointed because he has told me numerous times he wants me to drive the ice cream truck. That would be cool. Marketing, not cool, doesn't understand it, and it is definitely an abstract concept that is not exciting to a 7-year-old. But marketing by definition is to market yourself or your product. Well, you're marketing something to sell it. Market is a place of sale, and sale is your revenue, and revenue is your company. So, I have a real disdain for brands who say, they can't afford to do marketing, when really marketing is your business. I hear very often, and I know Katie does too, that we work in marketing PR. Those are businesses that tend to be the first thing to go in tough times, and it's always been so shocking to me because it just doesn't make sense if marketing is to sell your product and times are tough. Bless you. One of the brands that actually I'm really impressed with for so many reasons. I mean, these are some of my favorite brands that I've listed here, but American Express, they have a business theory that during recession, they actually up their marketing dollars and they spend more. When I worked in advertising, that was the main brand that I worked on, and I learned so much about business and branding from them. And this philosophy was based on the fact that, during those tough times is when people need advice on how to manage their money even more so than when things are going well. And then the other side thing that was a benefit to them was none of their competitors were advertising, or not as much. So they actually ended up coming out ahead because they had the foresight to make this investment and not think of it as an add-on. And so, I think everyone here is a believer in that. That's why you're here today. But I think, I caution people to shave that function off because you think you can, patch it on later. It really is your everything.
We got asked in the last group a question too that I get asked all the time, and I thought you handled it so good. I was like, I don't know, like a few grand, but the question was basically like, what I'm a small business, what's a reasonable marketing budget? And sometimes you hear like a percentage of revenue, which is kind of where I was going. And Joanna's, well, you give your response.
Well, what's the ROI? What are you going to get from it? If I said to you spend $10,000 and I'll give you $100,000 in incremental revenue, I mean, you'd probably say okay. Some things are less trackable than others, but most things, whether it's a marketing consulting or a social media agency or Google AdWords, whatever it is, there is a way to tie an ROI to it, and that's how you have to make your decision versus, like $2,000 can be way too much if you don't get anything out of it, and $10,000 is nothing if you get a lot out of it. So, and
I'll tell you, if you're managing a consultant, and we see them in every shape and size from the business perspective, but I have one client that came in and we have really cool brands we work with and really like business focused or quite industrial brands, and we have one that came in and was like, had so dialed in on their digital, and it was like, for every article, we need to see this, and had uber specific metrics, like that nobody, like, and even digital that have like an e-commerce that were asking us to do, and I was like, we'll try. Like, I we've actually never measured it, but even the fact that they came in with such specific requests, we were like, okay. So every time we did something, we were so focused on like, okay, we need to make sure it's pointing to this page and selling this and doing that. And I'll tell you, like, it does, and we've applied that much more to other clients, but I think just simply having some goals and performance requirements that you want to see from your dollars is important, like super important. And I'm shocked at how many people are like, I'm the marketing manager and here's my budget, and like dole it out and don't really track how it's doing. So do that.
We've talked a lot today about it's the long game, and in a lot of content marketing, you're playing the long game. So if you want to know tomorrow that that ad worked, well, like here's a great example. So the Flightographer ad, it ran in the Bullet. It was seen by, it was sent to 10,000 people, and a few thousand opened it, and then from there they clicked, and I don't know, there was one immediate sale. But now that person is posting it on Facebook, and now the next person is gonna, make decisions and even Nicole said to me on the phone, like, it's not an immediate, like, if people are planning their travel, it's not gonna happen overnight. So you have to be invested in the long game, and that's where you see the fruit of your labors. That said, there is some accountability, in social media, how many likes are you getting and what's the engagement, how many people are putting comments, like, you can see those things to know, if you're putting it out there and if it's getting a reaction. Right. So is it getting shared, and which we're going to talk about. So, the thing I like, when it comes to content and your brand, you're telling a story. Stories are emotional, and the best brands in the world create an emotional attachment. You love that brand. Not only do you stay loyal to that brand, but you tell other people you're an advocate. And those are all because of the stories they tell. It's not the transaction. I say stories are emotional, promotions aren't. Promotions have a place and they're important, but they come further down the food chain from once you have to lay the infrastructure and the groundwork of what is the story you're going to tell people. So this sort of continues on that theory, content builds trust. So, when you tell these stories with people, you become an expert in a certain subject matter, which means that people are going to start to come to you and rely on you for that information. You're going to become a pundit in that specific subject. That's going to create loyalty. When people need information on that, they're going to come to you because they know they can trust you for the information. Great content gets found. So, I have this thing I always say to people is if you're not on the internet, you don't exist. And that doesn't matter if you have a store or a product or a service. The first place people go to research any subject of anything is the internet and Google. I don't know how we actually existed before it, but that is a reality. So if you don't have some sort of presence where people can learn about you, then it's not going to go well. And then the great thing is this content can be shared. If you've already invested the time and or money to make this content, what greater way to get more bang for your buck than to let other people, move it and pass it on and share it? It's a greater ROI. And then ultimately, that creates more engagement, more commitment to your brand, and then more sales. So again, it goes back to playing the long game. The images I have up there are 3 brands that I particularly admire and follow because they do this so well. So it might be hard to read, but the top one's Net-a-Porter, and then Red Bull, and Furthermore. I don't know if you're familiar with Furthermore, but Furthermore is the content property of Equinox Fitness Clubs. So they have this entire website dedicated to health and wellness, and pretty much hardly ever do they talk about the Equinox Fitness Club. They're just engaging people in a certain lifestyle and a certain feeling. And I'm sure if the bean counters at Equinox were, going to go and say, well, how many memberships did we get because we posted an article on Brussels sprouts? They're not going to see it. But they're going to have to look at the whole picture and, how do people feel about the Equinox brand and what do they think about when they think about Equinox? So they're obviously playing the long game. Same with Red Bull, right? If you watch the crazy Red Bull videos of people jumping out of airplanes and whatever else they do, they're not sipping Red Bull while they're doing it. It's not that blatant and in your face. They're aligning the Red Bull brand with a certain lifestyle, and people come to associate the two. So this is a question that I get asked all the time, and then sometimes I don't get asked it. I just see with consulting clients that they're not doing it, which is understanding the difference between a content strategy and an editorial strategy. So a lot of people focus on the column on the right in a way because it's easier. It's easier to wrap your head around it. I'm going to post 6 times a day. I'm going to write 1 blog a week, and I'm going to write about, sugar-free treats, whatever. But you need the step before in order to make the editorial strategy more effective. So the content strategy is where you really figure out the fundamentals of why you're doing this in the first place. So, what is your organizational mission? So an example I give is, a naturopath who has various services. She sells her own supplements. She has a book. I'm thinking of someone in Toronto that I've dealt with before. So her mission is to help women live a healthier, more balanced, physically balanced life. That is her mission. Well, who is her target audience? It's women who are 30 plus, sort of 55-ish, because she does do a lot to do with hormones and hormonal imbalance. So that's already going to change her content strategy because she's not going after 24-year-old men. So she doesn't need to attract that audience. So when it comes to the right side, she's not going to go fishing where those fish aren't. What are the business goals? So is your goal to acquire new customers or to retain your customers? Because those two things alone are going to drive completely different strategies. You might have both, so you're going to have to do both. But a lot of companies, they're not looking for new clients. They just want to make sure that they keep the clients they have. Well, then everything you produce is going to be tailored to that audience. You don't need to educate people on what your product is. You need to give them new reasons to believe. And so again, what are the content goals? Is the goal to educate people, to teach them about a complex subject that they don't know about? Is it to entertain them, make them laugh, give them a light part of the day? Is it to buy something? Is it to make an appointment, a consultation? You always have to figure out what is the goal of the content. Why are you doing this? Then once you have that figured out, you can go to the editorial strategy. What is of interest to your readers? What are the different subject matters you're going to cover? A lot of people today we've heard the same thing over and over, where people are like, I'm so tired of having to talk about the same thing. Like whatever their business is, like all I do is talk all day about is bread. I'm tired of talking about bread. There are other ways to engage. You don't always have to be right in the center of that bullseye on the exact topic. What else do the people who like that also like? Yeah. And how can you engage them on subject matters that are of interest to them. People who like this are going to like that. So finally, where are you going to publish this content? I've had a lot of people, I always give this example, like, what am I going to put on Instagram? You don't start with what am I going to put on Instagram. You start again on the left, like, what is your strategy? What are you trying to accomplish? Maybe you don't belong on Instagram. If you're in a service, B2B business, like, really, what are you going to put on there? Like, don't just make work for yourself. You got to figure out which is the most effective channel and then go with it. And then finally, the frequency. And frequency, of course, there's sort of best practices, but then the reality is, like, time is finite and so is money. And so, how can you stretch your time and dollar as far as you can and be the most effective? Something that we've done a lot with clients is, how can you take the one piece of content you produced and divide it up into 5 bits so that it can last you longer, right? So, think of the stories you're telling, whether it's in video or in pictures or Word, and figure out, how can you slice it up to make it more effective. So this is just an example that I had from my eLux days, and a saying that we used to always say is product is content and content is product. So, for those of you who are in product-based businesses, and even if you're not, some of these lessons still apply. When it comes to product, merchandising is so critically important. And this is a fashion example, but even in other examples too, what is more interesting, seeing a page of 18 sweaters in grids of 3, or seeing the sweater styled and merchandised in some sort of lifestyle setting? One is going to engage readers more than the other, hands down. The thing in the middle there is, customer service. How do you talk to people? What do they hear on the phone when they're on hold? What auto response do they get when they email you? Those are all content opportunities. I was just on hold with someone the other day, and they had the funniest on-hold music, and then by the time they picked up, I'm like, that is hilarious. It was a song about being on hold.
Oh yeah.
It was hilarious. But then other stuff, like there's educational things, and there's so many things that you can do. Even in Toronto, there's a restaurant where they're playing. It's an Italian restaurant, and they're playing words to learn in Italian while you're in the bathroom. So there's so many opportunities to give people something that's either educational, entertaining, informative, or what have you. Write a review. I have feeling about that. I don't particularly love having reviews on your website, more because they're just a beast to manage, because people can go on there and write anything and it affects your brand. That said, you don't really need that anymore these days, because on social media people can write whatever they want and you have absolutely no control over it. But talk about opportunity. You telling your story is one thing. When customers tell your story and it's positive, it's even more impactful. So I could have 100 best practices, but the 4 that really I try to live by every day, both in my consulting business and the bullet, is to be authentic. People can see right through things that, if it doesn't feel real or genuine, people are not going to buy into it. We've been giving this example today about Oprah. What's so amazing, and one of the biggest keys to Oprah's success was she's so genuine and authentic. She just sort of says it like it is, and it just really does feel real. And you can think of other high-profile celebrities who are in similar industries as her, that you don't get that same feel. You don't really believe everything you're hearing. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So with marketing and content, it's a layered approach. One thing is not going to be the magic bullet. You're not going to make one video and it's going to go viral and you're going to be an internet celebrity. It's just maybe, but it's your same chance of winning the lottery. So you need to layer all the pieces, and which goes to, I'll skip to the last point, which is about testing. If there's one thing that I really believe in, is test different things, seed things with a little bit of money, see which works, analyze it, and then optimize it, and then test it again. And that's going to be the best use of your dollars and time, is to just play on the things that work and not on the things that don't. And even though I consult for other brands, we do marketing campaigns on the bullet all the time, and some of them flop. And I'm a marketing consultant, yeah. But there's just no way to know until you try it. But I don't throw tens of thousands of dollars at them. I try things and I see what's working, and I don't spend a lot of time on that stuff that's not working. I move on and I try something else. And then finally, just the 360-degree branding. Every touch point matters. So make sure that you've considered every point, not just who your customers and what they're seeing, but what are your suppliers seeing, what are your employees seeing, what is your accountant seeing. Make sure that you send the same brand message in every single touch point.
So I'll get into the PR. There's a lot of things that sort of are encompassed now in the way that PR works today, but sort of the backstory and the relationship of a PR person is, and I don't know if you guys have sort of preconceived notions of if you were like around for Sex and the City, it was Samantha, or what was the other, West Wing, and it was CJ. So PR people at the end of the day are kind of the gatekeeper for information, but we have this funny dance with the media where they need us. They need us for access to whether it's a CEO or talent. They need us for correct information on things. And I mean, the way things have moved now is we write the damn articles. Like, we will literally write the articles for them. So things have really evolved. But the way that they've evolved is they've gotten far more integrated and far more digitally focused. A PR person that's worth their salt today really understands the whole landscape and knows that, I think more than anything, understands your business. So understands how are you trying to move the needle, and what does success look like, and then is able to give a tailored strategy to that. But what's encompassed in sort of how we do PR now is things like influencer marketing, activations, like experiences that bring your brand to life, things that are in your community, so that really show that even if you're a company from Canada in the US, that you understand that market, and that are really about, this was for a real estate client I was talking to, or a real estate, but that understand traffic, your website traffic, and are able to see when things are working and not working and what's converting to sales. So the baseline difference between advertising and what we do in PR, which is going after editorial features, is that advertising you have to pay for and you get tons of control, and editorial you have to work your ass off for, and it typically has less control. So I mean, a big part of it is how you deliver. Like, if you have an interview, is it a good interview? And did you make a connection with the reporter or the producer or whatever? So you have less control, but at the end of the day, editorial is really seen as credible and something that is being endorsed by a legitimate news source versus just being paid for. And it's like, well, of course you're going to say you're awesome. You bought that ad, and it's clearly an ad. The way that we measure PR too, and advertising and PR have suffered from the same issue around, like, it's just hard to measure and know how it's doing. And I think anybody that you work with, whether you're hiring a marketing PR person in your own business, or it's a question I always ask in interviews, is like, and I don't ask about like how do you measure it, I ask like, how do you show it's working? Like, what would you tell a client and how it's working? And if they aren't coming back to your business, they're probably, I don't think, the right person. But typically how it's measured is things like ad value. So there's a multiple on editorial, like if you get a half a page or a full page in the Globe and Mail, you take what the rate of an ad is by a multiple. So it's really cool to throw out, like, and I have a slide in here, it's like, we had $100,000 on one, but it's like, did it sell? And that's what you want to look at. So I'll give you some examples, and this is an example I put in here mostly because I think it's an industry that doesn't do a lot of innovative things, although they have a product, and it's an example of, they were kind of the first in their space to do this. So this is a client of ours. So in my business, we have sort of three sectors we work in. So we do a lot in real estate development and sort of like Sotheby's was an example, like brokerages. We do tech, and then we do lifestyle. And I predominantly do our lifestyle stuff. And lifestyle gets to do cool things because it's like consumable products and consumer products. And real estate's like, I mean, there's heaps of money in it. That's why Bob Rennie is Bob Rennie, but it's typically not very exciting. And so this one client, Mosaic, came to us and just said, hey, we're just sick of spending like $300,000 with the Vancouver Sun and not getting a return, or not really, we don't think we're getting anything, so we're going to not do it and give you some of that budget and see what you can do. So what can you do? And so, what we really believed was, this product, I think their houses are superior, but exists like in spades, especially in the Fraser Valley. There's row home after row home after row home. And what they've all failed, as a bunch of men, what they all failed to zero in on is like, men don't buy homes, like women buy homes, and women care about what happens inside of the home. Like, sure that, you know, it's got a yard and 3 bedrooms and whatever, but like, it's an aspirational thing. So like, let's sell them, like, let's give them that. So the way that we packaged that together was by first understanding, you know, sort of what we were talking about earlier around like the geo-targeting. Like, this is a hyper-local. Like, they don't care if they're being seen by somebody in California or Calgary. They're selling a home in the Fraser Valley. Maybe it reaches somebody in Vancouver, but they want something that's hyper-local. So we found them, we made the recommendation that like, let's do a campaign, use it, and they were not bought into this at all originally. Let's use a campaign with somebody who's local. She actually lives like in the neighborhood, has a very big following. So this is Monica Hibbs, who you know, now has like several 100,000 Instagram followers, I think, and was getting profiled in like design magazines, and she was starting to build up her on-camera stuff, and just said, hey, okay, we're gonna like do a partnership. You're gonna give you a blank canvas row home and you decorate it. And she brought in the Cross, who was like the furniture partner, and then we're like, let's throw like an awesome party and invite all your people. And Jillian Harris came, and all the influencer scene came. So suddenly, you know, we allowed her to design, and we shot it, so we brought in professional photography, and at the end of it, we had amazing photos that we were able to use on our site and our different channels. We had like a trending hashtag that day. It was being shared by people like Jillian, who have an even bigger following and have nothing to do with the project. And it sold out, and they were like, I cannot believe this. And the thing I laugh about is like, there's a bunch of men, not to knock on men, but a bunch of men who, you know, their kind of barometer for like, should they care, was like, if their wives told them, and their wives were like, what is this thing? It's so cool. Why wasn't I invited to the thing? And they were like, what is this? And so they're like huge believers, to the point now that I was saying, these are some of the results. So it was one of her things was on the cover of Style at Home. It's like, we sell out, or not sell out, but we sell a heap of homes every time we do one of these experiences. And we did a cool clam bake. Anyway, it's a good example for, you know, this is a client who was willing to spend a bit of money, had a product. You know, we do the complete opposite though. We have brands like Cactus Club and Ford who pay zero. Like, they are a completely like, also when you're at a certain level as a brand, you can kind of be like, do you want a Ford partnership? Cool. Here's a car. Take some great pictures. Like, this is the ask. But even, you know, we worked with smaller groups where I'm pitching on some business right now where it's just a kid. My kids I'm obsessed with this line. My kids wear it, and I was like, I just like believe in what you're doing, and I think product for posts is, you know, a great way to grow, and they're looking to grow in the US. And anyway, so yeah, influencer marketing combined with this PR approach of like, don't just do the influencer and rely on them. Pitch it to the media. You know, make an event out of it. Like, actually get other people to show up. Leverage it like multiple times over, so that you really get bang for your buck if you're going to do that. This is really just about sort of how a PR person would think about, you know, if there's something exciting happening, here's sort of how we process information. So first of all, you have to capture it somewhere. So that's where a press release comes in. Press releases are super antiquated. Like, people aren't really like front page news because I got a press release. It's like, that's the some summary document of what's happening, and that you can share through pitching media. Then you obviously want to put it on social. I wouldn't just put it on social. I would look at like, what's the overarching strategy and how you're sharing that through social, but social's a big part of it. obviously pitching it out to media. Could you do an event around it? And if you did an event, how do you make that like a shareable event or an experience that really leaves people with just a super impressive sense of your brand? Should you sample? So, are there people that you want to reach that if you just did, a one-to-many type thing, like we were just saying in a B2B context, doing like, I have one client that, and we do this ourselves, where we go to like partner agencies and we just we call it like Taco Tuesday, and we bring tacos or Mexican food, and we talk about like sort of a shared thing our two firms are working on. And it's a great way to make connections. And I'll tell you, what I started to realize was like, I was always going after or trying to connect with, Joanna, like, she owns the business, so if we're pitching on work together, like, she's the person. But a lot of times it's like, kind of a middle cog, like a middle marketing person who's like, oh, we need a consultant for that, you guys, like, and I know you because you did a lunch with us. And so sometimes it is more about a direct experience. And then a lot of the times finding partners. So if it's somebody who has, you're not competing for the same you don't have a competing product, but you typically have the same audience, doing something together, leveraging, they might need you, you might need them, in terms of how you could leverage each other. And then a lot of you here are on social media and I think are doing a great job. I won't get into the sort of the post frequency and best practices, because it really is, just I think a case by case. I think in general, to me, the best practice is sort of the right-hand side, which is like, you just want every single channel, down to LinkedIn, which I think is like the one that Twitter too, that I tend to ignore, to have the same voice, look, feel, so that there's consistency, and that overall the brand experience doesn't differ from one channel to another. If possible, like, my big beef is like, don't say you're innovative and then have lame content. Like, if you're going to be innovative, you need to have innovative content like that. You need to be innovative. So just really going that way and trying to build engagement through your social content. And then if you're putting all the time and energy into doing this stuff, just see how it's working for you. And I think half the time, it's sort of like money. Like, that's not, I think, where a lot of us want to spend our time, is like the analytics. So pay someone to do it, and it doesn't cost that much, or learn from somebody who's really good at it, who can be like, okay, here's, or get mentored, or but you gotta manage what you measure.
Thank you.